All right, gentlemen. I'm still in Minnesota. By the time you guys see this video, I should be in the air, actively flying back to Cincinnati. But unfortunately, I don't land until 6 p.m. So, again, I'm missing another meeting. I feel bad. But my country needs me, so I thought it would be nice, since I haven't seen you guys in a while, to at least record this video real quick, kind of going over Holy Week and just kind of talking about what's going on and the importance of this week. And I know we all know what Holy Week is. We know the days, this, that, the other, and like the traditions and everything. But what I wanted to do in this brief video is actually discuss the importance of Holy Week, specifically from the men's perspective, and basically just break down day by day and talk about, as a man, what does this day mean for us. And what I decided to do, I actually took a bunch of notes. I figured there's no better way to understand Holy Week as a man than to break it down and see what were the men doing on these days, like when they actually occurred. And so I went through all of Holy Week. I wrote this down. I'm going to go through two different categories of men, either the 12 apostles and the masses, like the average Jew living in Jerusalem, the average man in the city at the time. I'm going to go through each day and explain what they were doing to better understand like what this week is for us. So on Palm Sunday, we begin. What were the 12 apostles doing on Palm Sunday? It was just yesterday. They processed in the city with Jesus, and they were essentially like his royal court. You know, Jesus is the Lord entering the city, and they were processing with him. They were right behind him. They were doing what he commanded. They were fetching the colt or the donkey for him, and they were laying these palm leaves and cloaks in Jesus' path, like showing that he's the king, he deserves this royal treatment. And what were the masses doing? Well, they gathered in a huge crowd to welcome this king. We don't know the exact number, but it's theorized that it's potentially like in thousands, like thousands of men are gathered outside the city to worship Jesus as their king, like the new David, essentially. And they were right there with the 12 apostles. They're gathering the palm leaves, they're laying them down, they're preparing the road to enter into the city of Jerusalem. And it's really only in the beginning stages of Holy Week that you'll see the 12 apostles and the crowd of men who live in the city kind of doing the same thing. And then after Palm Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of Holy Week, the 12 apostles are preaching with the Lord. They're following him. He's blessing this temple. He's going out. The Pharisees are questioning him and questioning his authority. And the 12 apostles are right there with Jesus as he's preaching. Of course, on Wednesday is traditionally known as the day in which Judas kind of sneaks away and meets with the high priests and agrees to turn him in. So it's kind of funny to see already, just a couple days into the city, we already see Judas kind of starting to slip. I think that's very reminiscent of like us. In many ways, like we could look at the 12 apostles as examples of us as men, like what we should be doing as followers of Christ. And it's easy to see like cracks in the armor already starting to appear. And what were the masses doing? The average man on these 3 days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they were in the temple. They were listening to Jesus. They were really like trying to understand him better. And one thing to note is that there was some serious momentum amongst the men in the city, starting to gain traction, and more people were talking. You hear about this Jesus guy who just came in, and that was a threat to the Pharisees that we'll see in a second. But Holy Thursday comes around, and this is something really interesting, and I wrote this down. What are the apostles doing? Well, it's the Last Supper. They're all there with Jesus, celebrating the Last Supper, the institution of the Eucharist, all these things. And they're present in this moment where Jesus knows this is his last night. One interesting thing I learned is that priests are not allowed to celebrate Mass in private on Holy Thursday. And I think it's just like it's like a metaphor. It's a beautiful thing. Priests in many ways are modern apostles, and they have to celebrate Mass together on Holy Thursday. It is considered wrong to be alone on Holy Thursday as a man. And it's really reminiscent of the apostles and Jesus being together for that last meal. And of course, we're not perfect, and neither were the 12 apostles. Judas, after dinner, he sneaks away and fetches the Pharisees and the crowd. And while that's happening, the other apostles are trying to stay up and pray overnight with Jesus, and they all fall asleep. It's kind of this funny thing, like as men, like we're just humans, and we will continually fall short. And in many ways, we'll even be tempted to completely jump ship, just like Judas did. And the masses, what were they doing? Well, that night, many of them were just at home. They weren't there. The Last Supper was just with the apostles. Most of them were at home. Or there's a good chance they were part of an angry mob that the Pharisees stirred up to go arrest Jesus. And another thing to note is that the Passover was going on. It was about to happen. So a lot of people in Jerusalem were just getting ready for the Passover. So Good Friday comes around. And what happens? Well, Jesus gets arrested late at night, and the apostles scatter. They're hiding. They're freaking out. They don't know what to do. Most of them are hiding at home or doing this, that, and the other. And we have Peter. We know Peter kind of follows Jesus and follows his trial, but from a distance. Jesus is getting questioned by the high priest and eventually Pontius Pilate. And Peter's just in the crowd, like in the back of the crowd, just kind of watching. People come up to him and be like, hey, weren't you with him? Denies him 3 times. And this guy's our first pope. It's easy to forget that. But Peter is the first pope, and this guy denies even knowing who Jesus is 3 times. And like, you could either be like that, or you could be like Judas, who's actively with the enemy in this moment. And that's just another example of us as men. Like we could claim to know Jesus, just like Peter did that night on Holy Thursday before the authorities came. We can claim to be followers of his and claim to be disciples. But when push comes to shove, it's really, really easy for us to just be like, I'm staying out of it. Like, even if you're not obviously going to be like, I'm denouncing Christianity. No, you'll probably just be in a situation where, something contentious might get brought up, like let's say in class, or you're meeting with someone who doesn't have the same beliefs. You're just going to quietly not say anything. Like, I'll just watch at a distance, just like Peter here in the morning of Good Friday. It's funny. There's these 12 apostles, and they know him better than any other man on earth. And of all 12 of these apostles, only one stays with Jesus as he's getting crucified during his passion, and that's John, the evangelist, the one who wrote the gospel. And it's crazy to think, like, these guys saw all these miracles that they know beyond a shadow of a doubt that this guy is the Son of God. And yet, when push comes to shove and the authorities come knocking, only one of them sticks around. It's just a reminder that we're capable of kind of letting the world tell us what to do instead of following God no matter what. And of course, what's the crowd doing? Well, 5 days ago, they were worshiping Jesus as a king. Now, all of a sudden, there's an angry mob outside of Pontius's courthouse demanding that he be killed. And Pontius is like, dude, the guy didn't do nothing. And they're like, nope, kill him. Bring us this Barabbas guy instead, a known murderer. They literally accept a known murderer out of prison instead of Jesus. And Pontius has no choice, essentially, other than to kill Jesus, because they're threatening to start a riot in the city if they don't kill this guy. And so what do they do after that? Well, they mock him throughout the whole crucifixion. There's a crowd of people watching and making fun of him. So it's crazy to think how quickly a crowd can turn, right? Like Palm Sunday, there's a crowd of people like, this is the king. This is the new David. And on Good Friday, there's a crowd of people saying, this guy needs to be killed ASAP. He ain't no king. Our only king is Caesar. When you live for the world, you'll get swept up in all these emotional things. Like as a man, if you live for the world, you'll get swept up in all these movements. whether it be like social media things that you'll see or just things that all your friends are doing. Like if you don't have a proper grounding like the average man did here in Jerusalem, you'll go from worshiping a guy 1 week to calling for his head by the end of the week. And it's just funny to think about, like, if you are not grounded, you will get swept away by the tides as a man. And then after Jesus' crucifixion, what are the apostles doing on Holy Saturday? Well, it's the Sabbath, so they're resting. Many of them went home. They went to their own homes in the city, and they were just resting. And of course, they were also hiding from the authorities. And they were in a pretty desperate place. They just figured that their God just died, essentially. And they had no idea. Like, they understood that he would be there, but they didn't know that he would actually resurrect. And here's the really interesting thing. This is one thing I want to point out. For the duration of Holy Saturday and Easter, what are the masses doing? They just went on with their lives. They just went on, they're going on about their business. And they're just getting ready for the Passover because they're Jewish, and there's this big cultural holiday going on. And they're acting as if nothing ever happened. Just like that. King, prophet, priest, on Sunday, by Friday, he's nothing but a criminal who needs to be executed. And on Saturday, all right, back to my life. That could be us if we don't choose to follow Christ. And another thing too, another note, we're all Christian, right? Otherwise we wouldn't be here in this men's group. And Easter, and like every Christian family, is like a big thing, right? It's this big cultural holiday with these religious, traditions behind it. And it's super easy to get swept up in that and just be like, oh yeah, this is what my family does on Sunday. I can't wait to go home for Easter. Like, as soon as Good Friday hits, I bet a bunch of you are going to be driving home and just be like, oh, I can't wait for Easter. Got to get ready. Got to get this stuff going. The eggs, the baskets, the gifts with your family. Go to Mass in the morning. Like, that's all great things. I'm not saying it's wrong. But just like the masses here, when Jesus actually was crucified and while he was actually being resurrected, many of them were just obsessed with the Passover. And they're like, oh yes, this is a cultural thing that my family needs to do. I need to be with my family. A bunch of people were gathered in Jerusalem for it. And they lost sight of God himself, who was there in the city. So it's easy to miss this. But like as men, if we're not recalling his passion, his death, and then his resurrection, we could just get swept up with all the family affairs of Easter and not actually understand the importance of it. And for us, like, we're going to be the heads of our own household one day. I know we're all just college students right now, but one day we will be the heads of that household. And we can either contribute to this American cultural fabric of like, oh yes, my family needs to do all these things, get all these things done, check these boxes. Or are we going to sit our family down and be like, listen, this is what happened today. We need to celebrate because of this. Not because our family has always gotten together on this day and we all have work off. No, we're celebrating because Jesus Christ was risen from the dead. As a man, you need to do that because then your family will actually understand the importance of this day, which is the most important day. Okay, the last thing I'll end with is, what are the 12 apostles doing on Easter? Well, they got together. They had kind of recovered from the shock of Jesus' death, and they met up in the upper room, and they were like, okay, now what? We need to do something. And that was a good step. As men, they got together, and they're like, okay, we need to recover. Of course, they're hiding behind locked doors because they're still afraid of the Jews coming to kill them. And what happens? Mary Magdalene finds the Lord missing from the tomb, tells Peter. They go back to the upper room, and Jesus comes to the upper room to meet the men who were there for all of it. Even though they failed, even though all these things went wrong, they denied him. One guy even betrays him, ends up killing himself over it. Only one guy stays around. Jesus knew that despite all their failings, they were still devoted men who were living their lives for Christ. And what does he do? He goes right back to him. He goes, I'm back. And of course, what do? They rejoice. They're so excited. And they prepare for the next stage of the ministry, which is essentially what we're called to do as men, is to do exactly what the apostles did after they met Jesus in the resurrected form. Okay, this got a little longer than I wanted to be, but I hope this makes sense. Like, this is what it means to be a man going through Holy Week. And I hope this makes some sort of sense with you guys. Just want to let you know, miss everybody. Hope to see people, at Holy Week and going around, and we don't have a ton of time left, but hope everything's going well, and I'll be seeing you guys soon enough. Have a good Holy Week, everybody. All right, take care. God bless.